As the world changes rapidly at St. Paul University, Philippines, School of Nursing and Allied Health Sciences, we are committed to focus on what matters most, the value of education by providing learning for all. Join us in Higher Education in Focus. Discover, visualize, and reimagine, a global webinar series that explores the challenges, opportunities, and lessons that educational institutions around the world needs. The series will also involve cutting-edge thinking in today's higher education. Learn from higher education experts, thought leaders, researchers, and innovators as they share their expertise about these contemporary topics that will benefit students, educators, and leaders across all disciplines. Good day, world. I am Alan Blaquera, and welcome to the second episode of our webinar series, Planetary Health, the Challenges and Opportunities for Healthcare. This series aims to provide practical competencies and transferable skills in response to changing landscape of higher education, to communicate current global higher education trends and challenges, and to explore multiple ways for higher education professionals to respond to the change and transformation brought about by technology and innovation. Before we formally start, here are a few reminders. To welcome us all, may I introduce the Program Director for Nursing at King Faisal University College of Applied Medical Science, Vice President, Sigma Honor Society of Nursing, Phi Gamma Chapter, Certification Board of Commissioner, National League for Nursing, a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach, and an adjunct faculty of St. Paul University, Philippines, Dr. Benjo Breboneria.
Thank you so much, Alan, for that introduction. So before we officially start our event for tonight, I would like to share some of my reflections from the previous event that we had last 2 weeks about legacy building and personal branding that was delivered by Dr. Selena Gills. So there are a lot of things that we have learned from that event, and particularly will benefit professionals or anyone who is working on higher education or even in practice. So one of the most important things that I learned actually is for us to, how can I say it, like to have a strong brand identity as a professional. And how are we going to do that? If we know who we are, if we know our brand, we will be able to, it will give us or provide us greater recognition in the field where we are working, increases both our credibility and also prestige, and it also can help us to become or position ourselves to become an industry leader. But aside from that, one of the things that I love with that presentation is the integration and explanation about some contemporary concepts in terms of leadership. And one of the things that I can still remember is the Kuses and Posner. So in some countries, not everybody knows that it is actually one of the most highly researched tool and book when it comes to leadership. And I really like on how most of the themes and elements of successful leaders around the world are highly emphasized. So Dr. Gills talked about the importance of characteristics such as challenging the process, such as inspiring a shared vision, enabling others to act, and also modeling the way, or living those values that act as a compass for a leader. And of course, as she mentioned as one of her favorites, which is encouraging the heart, which is the most important leadership qualities to establish an emotional connection, to make the people that you serve feel that you care about them. So that's actually, these are some of the most important reflections that I can still remember from that presentation. There are so many, like the importance of leadership. I mean, listening presence, to be an attentive listener. And also, I think everybody can relate and kind of resonated with me, and also for sure with some of the participants as well, about the importance of, on a busy day, to pause throughout the day. So it's very important for us to interact um, to ourselves, not only to the people around us, but also have that moment and space to interact with ourselves as individuals. So the next topic that we will have for this tonight's event is actually something that is related to, let me say that it is one of the most, I think, important concepts when it comes to our world, and also its impact on our health. And as you can see, this topic is now integrated even in health science professions curriculum. Like in our case as nurses, because I'm a nurse, that we have to understand that we have a key role in the co-design and implementation of planetary health solutions. And based on that long tradition of informing the public about diseases and promoting health, it is also evident that healthcare providers like us, like nurses as an example, take on an important role as change agents in a variety of activities concerning health topics or health aspects, both in local and also in global environmental changes. So to basically to contribute to health, or I mean nursing planetary health effectively, it is necessary to advance our role even as nurses, and same as with other healthcare providers. So before we formally start, I would like to first introduce our speaker for tonight. Dr. Teddie Potter is a clinical professor in the School of Nursing at University of Minnesota. She is a director of Planetary Health. She has handled many leadership positions in her career, and she's also a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing. And there is just so many accomplishments throughout her years of experience in making a significant difference to not only to our profession, but also to the world. She is deeply committed to climate change and planetary health education, including membership in the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments and membership in the American Academy of Nursing, particularly in the area of environmental and public health as an expert panel. She is a member of the coordinating committee of Columbia University's Global Consortium on Climate and Health Education, and a fellow in the Institute on the Environment at the University of Minnesota. She chairs clinicians for planetary health and is a member of the steering committee of the Planetary Health Alliance at Harvard. She currently serves on the National Academy of Medicine's Action Collaborative and Decarbonizing the U.S. health sector. And in 2019, Dr. Potter was appointed as the first Director of Planetary Health for the School of Nursing at the University of Minnesota. So to formally introduce our speaker for tonight, let me call on Dr. Teddie Potter.
Well, good evening. It's morning here in Minnesota, but it's wonderful to be in the midst of such esteemed colleagues. My gratitude to Dr. Benjamin, let's see if I can pronounce it correctly, Brebenaria, for inviting me. We've actually never met, had an opportunity to meet. So such is the wonderful world of interconnectivity now that we have Zoom and email and LinkedIn and all our wonderful ways. I feel like I know him. He's been communicating with me since the fall, and he's been very, very patient with changes that needed to be made, and exemplified leadership. Nurses need to be flexible. Nurses need to be ready to move where directions are called. So I'm grateful to be here today. If I look out my window, we have about 2 feet of snow. It's 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a balmy spring day in Minnesota. You can hear some of the birds are migrating back from the south. So there's a chance that winter has broken its hold. I would really prefer to be in your warm climate. That would be lovely, but I will take what I have. And they're going to play the slides from their side just to make sure that the reception is good. So if I can ask you to pull up your slides, that would be great. Great. And you, wonderful. You might need to enable some of the media. So the reason why I'm having them play it on this side is I'm showing a couple videos, and sometimes it's easier to have it directly played there. So I would be curious, just while we're waiting, if you wanted to put your name in the chat and where you're located, that would be wonderful. So we can build a circle or a community of learners today. In addition, we will be doing a Q&A after I speak. So feel free to jot down your questions. I'll take all the questions at the end. That way we can make sure everybody here has a chance to hear the questions. And if that's not working for you to pull up the slides on your side, I can pull them up on my side if that's easier.
Doctor, we can first probably try from your side. While
Okay,
yes.
I'll do my side and we'll see how things go.
So we have your participants from Saudi Arabia, from the Philippines.
Great. So I'm going to be talking to you about planetary health. And if you haven't heard of planetary health, don't feel bad. It's a new and emerging field related to healthcare. And so I will be walking you along the way of what it is and why it's important for us to get involved. So first of all, I want to acknowledge the indigenous people of all lands. Here in Minnesota, we are on the land of the Dakota people and the Anishinaabe or Ojibwe people in northern Minnesota. But the Philippines also has indigenous people. And why I pause to honor and celebrate the lives of indigenous people is that humans once understood how to live upon the land and not harm the land. We understood how to protect waters. We understood how to only take enough food and not harvest all the crop. We understood how to live in balance so that we could continue to have a thriving and viable planet for future generations. So even though planetary health is relatively new, it is a very ancient way of understanding that we need to recall and bring forward. So today I'm going to give a brief overview of what's going on with the planet. I'm going to describe ways that nurses can get involved, and I'm going to talk about publications that might help you sort of advance your knowledge in this area. I don't have any conflicts of interest, and all of the images that I use, I either took the pictures myself or they're Creative Commons pictures with a licensure for everyone. So a little bit about myself. I love nature. If it didn't get so cold in Minnesota, I'd probably sleep outside 24 or 365 days a year. I love the sounds. I love the fresh air. I love the water. I love animals, birds, and all the different wildlife that's going on. Looks like I froze a little bit, but that's okay. It's not because it's too cold here. And so I love nature. And when you love nature and you pay attention to nature, you realize that nature has deep and rich patterns. And so I'm going to just turn off my video and see if that works. Okay, looks like I can't. Benjamin, can you still hear me okay?
Yes, doctor.
Okay,
We can-
perfect, great. Okay, so nature has deep and rich patterns that are just beautiful.
Can you check, doctor, if the video works? So while waiting for our speaker, probably because of some weather challenges, so we will try to wait for a little bit.
I'm not quite,
Yes,
okay,
doctor.
I'm not quite sure what happened there, but anyway, I'll just keep moving ahead. It looks like your slides are up. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so next, we'll just pick up where we left off. Next slide, please. Okay, so when you love nature and you see these deep patterns, you realize that we're almost interconnected, deeply interconnected, like a web of life. And that's how I saw things. And because of that, I chose nursing. Nursing is a career that understands these connections. We understand that humans are nested within families, are nested within communities, are nested within nations, and that the environment affects whether they're healthy or not healthy. We understand that humans need good food. We understand that animals are important, pet therapy is important. Nurses get it. We really do understand this web of life. So that's why, again, I chose nursing. Next slide, please. So when you see those patterns, when you pay attention to those patterns, I began to understand in the early 1990s, 2000s, right around there, that the patterns were no longer what I had grown up with, even though I had not moved. So as a child, I went skating for my birthday. My birthday was in November. It was always the lakes froze over and we went skating. So that was very predictable. It was something that happened every year. Now the ice is probably thick enough to skate on in maybe January or February, but not in November. People are still sometimes wearing shorts in November. So something was really, really wrong here. Similarly, birds that went away every year and then they came back in the spring, like our robin. This is a picture of the robin. It always goes away and it's our first sign of spring. And it's so exciting because it's like spring is here. Now, those of you who live in a warm climate, you might not realize why we get so excited about the return of warm weather and light. But when you're in a cold climate, it's really wonderful to have spring returning. And so the robin was a really important bird. I remember the late 1990s and the robin never left. It stayed all winter long. So something was wrong. And finally, the story of this flower, which is called a lily of the valley. My ancestors are buried in southern Minnesota, and every spring from when I was a little child on, we would hop in my grandparents' car, and this was before the days of seatbelts. The kids would sit in the very, very far back, and I'd be surrounded by big buckets of lilies of the valley, which were blooming in late May. And we would decorate the graves with lilies of the valley. And now the lilies of the valley bloom late April, early May. They're long gone when May has come. So these patterns that I grew up with, that I knew, the flowers, the ice, the birds, were all shifting and changing. And I needed to know what was happening. Next slide, please. So I like this quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We're all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. And that's an understanding of planetary health, that we do not stay isolated from this web of life. We're not above it. We're not separate from it. We're absolutely woven into this whole aspect of planetary life. And when something is harming that life, we all are harmed. Next slide, please. So why are these threads breaking? What is going on here? And so as a nurse, I don't just look at this and go, oh my goodness, there's a problem. I guess it's none of my business, or I'm not going to worry about it. No, if it's going to lead to the suffering of people and contribute to shorter lives and harmed children, then I need to get involved. So I really went to look of why is this happening? Next slide. And why this is happening is based on the story of, you might have heard of upstream thinking. And upstream thinking is based on a parable that there was a village beside a river. And one day a body came floating down the river, and the villagers swam out, got the body, and the person was still alive, just barely. They brought the body to shore. They helped bind up wounds. They fed the person. They nurtured them. They sheltered them. But then the next week, a couple more bodies came down, and then 4 more, and then 6 more, and then they just kept coming. And the village elder said, there is no way we can continue to patch these people up. We have to get in our canoe and go upstream to figure out what is happening. And so that's what I did. I went upstream. Why are these threads breaking? Why are we having these disruptions? Why are we having really abnormal patterns or abnormal shifts in our patterns? What is it? Next slide. And there's a couple reasons here that we need to talk about. One is human population. Now, I'm not against humans. I love humans. I think humans are wonderful. And I'm not against children and people having families. But we have, as a species, gotten out of balance. If you look at how many humans there were on the planet, it was pretty stable until the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the burning of coal, and then we were able to industrialize, and we were able to, drive industry and raise more food, all of that. And then look at our population just took off. And we have the dubious honor, next slide, of just in this past November, topping 8 billion people living on the planet. Now, you might think there's plenty of space for 8 billion people. Teddie, why should I be worried? This isn't an issue. Next slide, I'll tell you why it's an issue. Because as our as our health goes up, as our quality of life goes up, as people, we decrease poverty, which are all good things, all really, really good things, our consumption goes up. So our consuming of natural resources goes up. The last time we lived in balance with, we had humans that were consuming our natural resources, and the earth was able to renew the resources. The last time we were in balance was 1970. So over 50 years ago, we were in balance. Since that point in time, we've been drawing down our reserves, our bank account. And so much so that right now, we take 1.6 Earths to continue to live the way we're living. Now, anybody who saves money or puts money in a bank, you know that you can't draw past what you're putting in and still have a viable account. So we're borrowing or stealing from future generations. Now, some of you might say, well, hasn't COVID taught us something? We're not flying all over, the world, and we're changing things. We're on Zoom instead of in an auditorium. But if you look at 2020, the results for 2020, we still used up all of our sort of Earth's allotment, our resource allowable resources by September 1st. So it wasn't a huge change. And so we have to get on top of that. Next slide, please. So in essence, we have mortgaged the health of future generations to realize economic developmental gains in the present. And so we need to be owning that and recognizing that we are jeopardizing future generations. Next slide. And so we're causing the planet to change. You might think, well, we're kind of puny and not that strong. How could we cause a big, huge planet to change? Well, we are. We have to own that. We are. There's evidence that things are shifting and changing. And nursing, if we're nothing else, well, we're always a caring profession, but if nothing else, we're also a science-based profession. We base our profession on data. And the data is unequivocal. We are changing the planet in many, many ways that are threatening the Earth's natural life support system. So forests are being cleared at an alarming rate. Well, forests are contribute to our levels of oxygen. So we have got to be concerned about our forests being cleared. They draw down carbon dioxide. They have a very important role to play. Plus, they provide foods and they provide shelters and they provide respite from the sun and heat. Biodiversity is rapidly disappearing. In fact, there's a natural rate of biodiversity loss. Animals come, animals go, insects come, insects go. And there's just this natural rate that's in balance. But we are having an extinction rate that is 1,000 times normal rate of extinction. Now, you might think, I don't really care about this bug in Philippines. It doesn't really matter if it disappears. But you better believe it's going to matter when our pollinators disappear, when our birds, our bees, our butterflies, our insects that are absolutely instrumental to our food supply, when they disappear, we are in problems. The ocean is acidifying. I don't have to tell you that. You are an ocean-based nation. I'm in Minnesota. I'm a landlocked nation. So I have to take your word for it that the coral reefs are bleaching, the fishing populations are going out further, et cetera. Land is becoming desert. Our soil, air, and water are being polluted. I just read about last year being one of the first years that they were finding in cord blood, so for an infant's umbilical cord, microplastics. Now, they're not quite sure what over time microplastics in our bloodstream are going to do. We don't know that yet, but that can't be good. That can't be good to have plastic pumping through our bloodstream. So we are polluting our, as I said, the things that life depends on. Our rivers are drying up. There's increased shortages of drinking water. Extreme weather events are harming communities, and you all know that with your typhoons down in your area and hurricanes over on my side of the globe. We know how destructive they are. Temperatures are increasing at an alarming rate, with places becoming almost inhospitable, and sea levels are rising. Next slide, please. And so it's threatening birds and animals that we love. This is a bird from the Philippines, which, is one that's really important to you and is iconic for the Philippines. Next slide. And your beaches have plastic on them, and our beaches are too. I'm not just calling out the Philippines. This is a picture, a global issue of plastics washing up on the shore. Do you want your children to be playing on a beach like this? So we have to be owning this, that we're causing problems. Next slide. And as I mentioned, the hurricanes. I lived through Hurricane Ian, which was down in the tropics in September. And so this is no longer just a kind of, something that we never have. We don't have hurricanes in Minnesota. But now I understand and appreciate people who live in the eye of the storm of a hurricane, what it can do and the amount of damage that it can cause. Next slide, please. And all of this is threatening our food source. So whether it's collapse of our marine fisheries, or the environment is no longer able to be sustain food, we've got a problem. Next slide. And unfortunately, your nation, the Philippines, is the third most vulnerable country to climate change, according to a 2017 World Risk Report. So this is not something that's way in the future or it's happening now, and we need to address it now. When I see something like this, that touches me as a nurse. As a nurse, I can see that I need to be worried about this. If we don't have adequate nutrition for our people, then we do not have adequate immunity. And then we have a higher risk factor of diseases and problems occurring. Next slide. And so briefly, I just want to go into one of these problems. I listed about 10 of those problems, but just briefly, just an overview of what I like people to understand about climate change. The Earth is positioned, what we say, in the Goldilocks position. It's not too close to the sun, it's not too far from the sun, it's just right. It's perfectly placed. And if we weren't messing it up, we could have life on this planet for a very, very long time, because everything is here that we need to survive. And the atmosphere is this beautiful thin layer. It's just this teeny, teeny thin varnish layer over the planet. And that thin layer allows some of the sun's energy to come in, and then it radiates out the rest of the sun's energy. So again, we're not too hot, we're just right. We're able to grow our crops, and we're able to survive as a species. Think about, well, maybe it's hard for you to picture, but it's not hard for somebody in Minnesota. When we get cold in the wintertime and we pull a blanket up over us, we don't get warm instantaneously. It takes a little bit of chilling under the blanket, and then you generate enough heat from chilling, or from shaking, and then that heat builds up under the blanket, and we're nice and warm for the rest of the evening. That's what's happening with our particulate matter that we're putting up into the atmosphere. Anything we're putting up in the atmosphere, these little particles, greenhouse gases, when we put them up in the atmosphere, we're adding to this blanket. Now, this blanket is getting thicker and thicker, but there's this lag time. Just like if I pull up the blanket in the winter, it takes me a while to get warm. When we're pulling this blanket up around the Earth, there's about a 30-year lag time. So what we're seeing right now with the storms and the sea level rise and all the problems that are currently going on right now is related to the level of greenhouse gases that we had 30 years ago. That means that even if we stop things today, we would have 30 more years of things getting worse before they start getting better because of that lag time. Next slide, please. And, people will say, well, this is a natural pattern over time. You know, I love patterns. I told you that in the very beginning. Patterns are wonderful. And yes, there is a natural pattern over time. And how do we know that? We know that because they take big drills and they drill the ice down in Antarctica. They bring the core up, and they can see that there were certain levels of carbon dioxide bubbles in at certain times. And so they know this, they know where we were. And yes, the Earth had warming periods, ice ages, warming periods, ice ages over time. But look at, we have busted the bank here. The highest that you got in sort of history, through human history, was about 300 parts per million of sort of what we call greenhouse gases, these particles in the air. It was about 300. And so when there were a lot of particles, it was warm. When there were very few particles, it was glacier or ice age. So 300 is about the cap. Well, we have shot past that, folks. As a matter of fact, NASA scientist James Hansen has said, to keep things normal, we can tolerate about 350 parts per million of these greenhouse gases. But in 2019, we were at 409. Next slide, please. And this month, we're at 420. So we continue to go on the rise. We continue to warm up the planet. Next slide. So what does that mean? What that means is carbon dioxide goes up, the planet warms. Next slide. And this it's visible, folks. It's visible and it's in the data. This isn't fake news. This isn't somebody cooking up, false images. This is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the United States looking at the data and plotting out how our country has changed since the 1900s. Look at this. Look what's happening to us. And if you want to think that this is just the United States, next slide, please. It's happening everywhere. So up in Canada a couple of years ago, wildfires and highest temperatures up in British Columbia. They weren't prepared for this. They don't have air conditioning up there. And many, many people died. Next slide. And then the polar air, again, the Earth is designed in such a beautiful way. There's this jet stream around the top of the planet that keeps the cold air above the Arctic air above the jet stream and the warm temperate air below the jet stream. And it's just almost like a halo around the top of the planet. And because of climate change, it's become real wobbly. It's really got some irregularities. And when it dips down low, it draws all that Arctic air down over wherever it's going. So in Texas, they had temperatures that were far colder than even Alaska because of this irregularity. Their pipes froze, their electrical systems went down. They had a terrible, terrible time and many deaths related to that. Minnesota, we draw it down and we get our polar vortexes. It's not safe to be outside because your skin actually, the little water crystals in your skin actually freeze. And you get frostbite is what that is. Next slide. And this is happening all over the globe. Everything is getting warmer. Next slide. And this is a picture of the Philippines. I showed you the picture of the United States and our nation changing over time. This is your nation. Each of these different colors represents a thermal grid over years' times. And this is what's happening in your nation. Your nation is getting warmer. Again, it's based on data. Next slide. So what's happening locally, just to share my story, but you can come up with your own story of what's happening in your locations. Our state, Minnesota, is a Dakota word, an indigenous word, and it means the land the place where the water reflects the sky. And we have many, many lakes, lots of water, and it's so we're called the land of sky blue waters. This was the sky a couple years ago in Minnesota. Orange, sickly orange. This isn't sunset. This was when it should have been blue sky. And this is what the sky looked like because of wildfires in Canada and out west. Next slide. So I talked about being an interconnected web. I can't disregard what's happening in other parts of the world because it comes and it impacts the rest of the world. We're all interconnected. We're one global climate system. We're one global water system. We're one global atmospheric system. And so we have to be involved and participating, not as just an isolated nation of, well, if this isn't happening to us, we don't have to worry about it. Of course we do. It's all interconnected. Next slide, please. Half the world's people live within 40 miles of a coast. Now that doesn't seem probably too hard for you to think about in the Philippines. That seems fairly logical. But it's for somebody in Minnesota, a landlocked nation, that's pretty incredible to have that many people living close to coast. Next slide, please. And so with sea level rise, if we rise to 1.5 degrees centigrade global warming, we're right about now 1.1, 1.2. And they highly, highly suspect we're going to move past 1.5, likely to get up to 3, hopefully not 4 to 6. And right now we have to make changes now to make sure we don't get this high. But if you look at the blue, that's the land that's going to be lost in New York. And so JFK International Airport is going to be underwater. Newark Airport is going to be underwater. Much of lower Manhattan is going to be underwater. That's just with 1.5. With 3 degrees centigrade warming, we go up and lose all the territory in orange. Next slide, please. This is Florida. I would not encourage anybody to buy land in Florida right now. The lower third of Florida will be gone. Miami will be underwater at 1.5 degrees centigrade. We'd say that if you emit now, you are committing this future to this future. Next slide. And just in case you were feeling left out, here's the Philippines. Look at Manila. How much of your country will be underwater at 1.5 and 3.0 degrees warming? All your hospitals, all your housing, everything will need to change. And this is what we're committing ourselves to unless we radically change now. Next slide, please. And we know that when people can no longer survive in their own lands, they go on the move. It's expected that there's going to be 216 million people across 6 world regions on the move by 2050. That's not too far from now. Next slide. And all of these have health impacts. That's why it's so important for nurses to get involved. This isn't just something like, oh, this is scary, this is worrisome, I don't want to even think about it. This is nursing. I am calling nurses to get involved, to be involved in this. All of these changes, not just climate change, biodiversity loss, pollutions, all the things I just mentioned, have health impacts. They worsen cardiac conditions. They worsen conditions for people with respiratory conditions. They increase zoonotic diseases and the risk of diarrheal diseases and the risk of pandemics, folks. We have that fresh on our minds right now of what that looks like. Antimicrobial resistance, toxin exposures, heat strokes, mental health effects, malnutrition, forced displacement and migration, civil strife, and trauma. It is suspected and really strongly believed that the war in Syria, the civil war in Syria, is one of our first climate wars, in that it was a 500-year drought that occurred. People migrated from the rural areas into the cities. The cities could not support that pressure, and the area broke into civil unrest. And so we're going to see more of that as things get worse. This piece about mental health, it is really, really big, and especially for our young people, as they look at a very uncertain future, they're wondering, is it important for me to go to school? Should I even think about ever having a long-term relationship? Isn't it kind of pointless? So there's a great deal of despair. There's also a great deal of despair in people who rely on the land or rely on maybe they fish, or they rely on the stability of the crops. They're also having a great deal of despair. So nurses have to be aware that we're seeing mental health issues on the rise. Next slide, please. So this is a quote from the Landsat Countdown, and it's from 2019. And what I'd like you to do is picture in your mind, as I read this quote, a child that you know. It might be your own child, it might be a grandchild if you're older like me, it might be a neighbor child, it might be somebody who, a colleague's child, somebody who is on the playground in your local area. But picture in your mind this little child. The life of every child born today will be profoundly affected by climate change, with populations around the world increasingly facing extremes of weather, food, and water insecurity, changing patterns of infectious disease, and a less certain future. Without accelerated intervention, this new era will come to define the health of people at every stage of their lives. Every stage of their lives. That means no matter what type of nurse you are, if you're a labor and delivery nurse, you're in family practice, you're a clinic nurse, you work with elders, every stage of their lives, you are going to be involved dealing with issues related to climate change. You look at the backdrop of this picture, that's my son holding my grandson. This is real. This is as real as it gets. What do I want his future to be like? Next slide. And so if you can play this, hopefully we'll get sound. If not, I'll make sure you have access to these slides.
I have seen rising rates of heat exhaustion,
depression,
double the normal number of asthma exacerbations,
cardiovasculares, infartos, stroke,
problems with kidneys, heart, and lungs.
I've seen children die due to the air quality on our streets.
من الإصابات الميكروبية المتنقلة من الحيوانات
and the worsening of psychiatric illnesses,
Stress and anxiety of not knowing, is this flood going to come again?
When the Category 4 typhoon made its landfall, the hospital's basement flooded.
Heat waves close to 50 degrees.
The unprecedented droughts and locust infestations.
Les vagues de chaleur de plus en plus longues, de plus en plus fréquentes et de plus en plus chaudes rendent les patients de plus en plus malades.
I prescribe healthy air as a right for all children.
I prescribe the rich nations to make the biggest cuts in emissions.
D'investir massivement dans des projets d'adaptation climatique qui touchent la santé.
To invest in reversal of the negative impacts.
To build resilience.
E risolvere le disuguaglianze sanitarie e sociali.
Y dejen de financiar
of fossil fuels.
Climate change
is a health emergency, and it is my ethical duty to speak about it.
We have a crisis.
So the world is waking up. The healthcare workers are waking up. We're realizing that we are ethically obligated to do things about this destruction of the nation, of the planet that we're causing. Next slide, please.
I have seen rising.
So this is what how Anthony Guterres, the UN General Secretary, opened this most recent conference of the parties in Egypt. We are in the fight of our lives and we're losing. Greenhouse gas emissions keep growing, global temperatures keep rising, and our planet is fast approaching tipping points that will make climate chaos irreversible. We're on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator. Humanity has a choice, cooperate or perish. It's either a climate solidarity pact or a collective suicide pact. That is extremely sobering, but that is the turning point we're at right now, the point of choice. Next slide. And I want to tie this to who we are as nurses. This is the Filipino Registered Nurses Association, and this is in your code of ethics. As Filipino nurses, this is in your code of ethics. Listen to these words. The Filipino registered nurse, believing in the worth and dignity of each human being, recognizes the primary responsibility to preserve health at all costs. This responsibility encompasses promotion of health, prevention of illness, alleviation of suffering, and restoration of health. That is why we need to get involved. Next slide, please. This is Greta Thunberg, the iconic young woman from Sweden who really launched a movement by deciding not to go to school on Fridays and sitting outside her legislature with a little hand-drawn sign that said, "I'm on climate strike." And she empowered a global movement of youth. And this is what she has to say. Next slide, please. We can't save the world by playing by the rules because the rules have to be changed. Everything needs to change, and it has to start today. Next slide. So that brings me to planetary health. I just want everybody to kind of go, that's the tough stuff. And I could just gloss over the tough news and go right to solutions and what are we going to do? But we have to, as nurses, be aware of the diagnosis. We don't say, I don't care if the person has cancer. I don't care if the person has diabetes or heart disease. You have to understand what we're facing. You have to understand how serious this is, because only by taking this seriously, by looking at the data, by understanding the system, are we able to intervene. Right now, the Earth is in multi-system failure. And any of you who are intensive care nurses know that you've got to get working on this. The patient is not going to survive if it's in multi-system failure. And that we need expertise from all different sectors working together in harmony to pull this patient back from the brink of extinction. And that's where we are with Planetary Health. So instead of being a problems-focused sort of field or discipline, Planetary Health is calling us to solutions. So next slide, please. This is the definition of planetary health. Planetary health is solutions-oriented. I like the sound of that. Transdisciplinary, in that we're not going to just solve this as nurses or doctors or pharmacists or social workers. We have to be talking to farmers and lawyers and politicians and teachers and people of faith and artists. We have to talk to everyone in order to solve this problem. It's a social movement focused on analyzing and addressing the impacts of human disruptions to Earth's natural systems on human health and all life on the planet. So it is data-driven. It's looking at the facts. It's based in science and developing solutions based on that good science. Next slide, please. Some of you might have heard of y'all have probably heard of public health as nurses, but EcoHealth, One Health, Global Health, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, all of this is nested under planetary health. So you don't have to give up your role as a public health nurse to become a planetary health nurse. You don't have to be, move from global health to something else. Stay where you are, work where you are, but have the lens of this overarching sort of way of understanding things. We have to work together. Again, this isn't just climate change. It's all these issues related to the health of the planet that we have to work on together. Next slide. So I have a little short little video to watch.
Planetary health is a new field and social movement focused on addressing the human health effects of the Earth crisis. Planetary health research teaches us that our dismantling of nature has become an urgent threat to our own health and well-being. Climate change, loss of biodiversity, and other forms of global environmental change are interacting to affect the core foundations of human well-being. From the quality and quantity of food we can produce, to the quality of air we breathe and water we drink, to our exposure to infectious diseases and extreme weather events. Every dimension of health is being affected. Safeguarding human health and well-being and protecting the rest of life on Earth will require deep, urgent structural change in how we live and a global commitment to reversing our degradation of Earth's natural systems. Our growing awakening to this fact holds enormous promise. Looking out across the domains of global food systems, energy systems, manufacturing and the circular economy, and urban design, we see a rich landscape of solutions. We can imagine a world in which we have extended today's remarkable gains in renewable energy technology and moved to a post-combustion energy system. A world where we're producing food and manufactured goods with dramatically reduced ecological inputs. And a world where most of us are living in cities that have been designed to optimize physical, mental, and cultural health while allowing nature to regenerate. The moment we face calls for more than rapid innovation in our technologies and practices. Underneath the Earth crisis we have created and the global health crisis that it is precipitating is a spiritual crisis. The reverence and awe that most of us feel toward nature has lost its authority in guiding our decisions. We will need to weave a new fabric with threads from indigenous knowledges, the world's faith traditions, literature, and the arts that reasserts our spiritual connection to the natural world and interdependence to one another. Our planet, our health, the state of Earth's natural systems, and the well-being of humanity cannot remain disconnected. We know what needs to be done. We have the solutions. It all depends on what we decide to do right now, today. Please join the Planetary Health Movement.
Okay, next slide, please. And one more, I think. So how do we learn this? How do we move into this area? I want to invite you to take a look at the Planetary Health Education Framework. Much of what I'm talking about can be located on the website, the Planetary Health Alliance, which is located at Harvard. That's the Secretariat. But it's made up of organizations, over 200 organizations from around the world working together to restore the health of the planet and the health of all humans and all life on the planet. And so these things that I'm mentioning are all free. You can download them for free and you can have access to them. If you're a teacher on that site, they also have case studies, they have syllabus, they have slide decks, they've got videos, excuse me. So a lot of materials available for free. We also have a group called Clinicians for Planetary Health, and they are healthcare clinicians from all over the world that come in and we give talks, probably about 4 times a year. The next one is going to be March 17th, and it's going to be on forest bathing and how forests can actually be part of renewing our health. But I want to draw your attention to the Planetary Health Education Framework. This is a framework designed by scholars in many different fields from around the world. We all got together and we said, how can we talk together if we don't have a shared language? So how do we create a shared language so our students can engage with one another? Because nurses can all talk together, or nurses can talk to physicians or other health professionals. But I don't have the language of a farmer. I don't have necessarily the language of an engineer. So I need to have a shared language so that we can start working on global solutions. So we put our heads together and we said, okay, what do our students in colleges and universities need to know? Well, when we started, we had a list of 500 things we said that everybody needed to know. Well, that doesn't work well. As if you're an educator, you know, there's not much time to teach that many things. So we worked together until we got down to 5 core principles. And these are the 5 domains that we want all people around the world to understand. Interconnection within nature. That we are not humans and nature. We don't need to just reconnect. We are in nature. We are absolutely part of the same system. That's a fundamental understanding that we have to bring all our people to in order to understand that what we do to the one part of the system, we do to ourselves. What we do to the forests, we do to ourselves. How we pollute the oceans, we pollute our own, affect our own lives. So interconnection within nature is essential. The Anthropocene, and understanding that humans are causing this problem. It's not some natural phenomena. It's humans causing this issue. Equity and social justice, that our decisions, solutions have got to be available to all peoples, and all people rise to all people. Systems thinking and complexity, that we need to understand that you might have an idea for over here, but you also need to know how it connects to this part of the system, that everything's interconnected. And then movement building and systems change. How do we get the work done? These are all, if you can think of this as almost a cross section of a rope, they're all braided together. So it's not a hierarchy. It's all braided together. And these are the 5 principles that we want everybody to know. Next slide, please. The other piece of a document that is my go-to document that's really important is the Sao Paulo Declaration. In 2021, we were scheduled to have Planetary Health Alliance annual meeting in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And we weren't able to do that because of COVID. So we met virtually over Zoom. I think there were 5,000 participants. And we drafted the Sao Paulo Declaration on Planetary Health. This is the global call for what needs to change. And it begins with, we need a fundamental shift in how we live on Earth, what we're calling the Great Transition. Achieving the Great Transition will require rapid and deep structural changes across most dimensions of human activity. Now, you can be wringing your hands saying, well, we don't want to change, we don't want to change. It's got to change. We're on that path towards a suicide pact, as the UN General Secretary said. So it's got to change. But I want to say that these changes do not have to be a burden, and they don't have to be harmful. As we create changes, people actually start to have renewed health and have better quality of life. So that's the direction we're moving. The Sao Paulo Declaration advises all these different sectors of where they need to make changes. I do want to say that the next Planetary Health Alliance meeting is in Malaysia in May of 2024. So in your neighborhood, I would urge you to attend and be part of this global movement. Hopefully I'll be there and we can have lunch together. So next slide, please. So the Sao Paulo Declaration calls for major innovation and major collaboration across all these sectors. We have got to get involved. As you see, there's the healthcare is included. Next slide. And this is what the global community calls for us to change in healthcare. We need to reorient all systems towards planetary health. We need to be aiming for a nature-positive, carbon-neutral healthcare system before 2040. We need to focus on disease prevention, health promotion, and health equity as the heart of the transition. So away from 11th hour rescue medicine. As I tell my students right now, we do illness care, we don't do health care. We care for illness, we don't care for preserving the health of people. We need to flip it back towards keeping people from getting ill to begin with. We need to include traditional knowledges led by Indigenous people. We need to support green spaces so that everyone has access to green spaces and nutritious, affordable diets, and make sure that people have access to culturally appropriate health services as a human right. Now, anytime human rights are mentioned, people get the heebie-jeebies. They get a little worried when that's mentioned. But this is the global call. We all have to change. I can see many, many things that the United States has to change in this. We're working on access to health care for all people. So we as nurses have got to start to be working in these spaces and consider it our work. Next slide, please. So why nurses? What is it about us that why am I calling us to this? Our profession is deeply based on relationships, and it's a deeply ethical profession. As a matter of fact, the Gallup poll year after year after year for 20 years in a row, 21 years in a row, I think now, or 22 we're up to, we nurses have been voted the most ethical profession. The most ethical profession, not just most ethical health profession, most ethical profession. And we outpace everybody else by like 15 or 20 points. The next closest one is about 15 or 20 points less than nurses. People trust us to work on health and to preserve life and to alleviate suffering. We're systems thinkers. We understand this. We understand that we need to be working on internal systems all the way out to the planetary systems. Work does not get done without us. We are a busy people. We get stuff done. The world is made up of 27 million nurses and midwives globally, and we make up 50% of the healthcare workforce. So when we get involved, things happen. And again, we have a strong code of ethics. Next slide, please. So we're starting, how would we nurse for planetary health? And when I say we, I'm working with authors right now, and we're co-authoring a piece and working with the International Council of Nurses. And that piece is going to be released at the Congress in Montreal in July on how do we nurse for planetary health. So stay tuned and join the movement. Next slide. In our personal lives, we can make changes. Next slide. So I would urge you when you get these slides, and they are going to be made available, so you'll have links for these various things. Go to this site and you can calculate your carbon footprint and how much are you generating. So this happened to be my results. I use 1.8 Earths to live the way I live. Well, that's kind of a wake-up call on, you know, that I'm contributing to this. I have my students do it, and sometimes they're up to 4.5 Earths to support, and they're just like, poof, their minds are just blown that they're causing the problem. Next slide. And we need to be understanding the sustainable development goals and involved in all of these goals. This is nursing. There isn't one of these goals that isn't us. Nursing is not just done in a hospital or not just done in a clinic. We are involved in all of these things. Next slide, please. In our profession, next slide. There's a program called the Nurses Climate Challenge, and I would urge you to take a look at this. It actually was started by one of my doctoral students, so that's pretty fun. And it's a global movement to inform nurses. How do you teach other nurses about climate change and how we restore the health of the planet? Next slide. The Nurses Toolkit is from your area over in Australia. It's a toolkit on how do you have sustainable systems in a healthcare setting. Next slide. And then you've got a Planetary Health Philippines. And isn't that wonderful that there's a whole group in the Philippines working on this? Next slide. And this is the International Council of Nursing Code of Ethics. So again, this ethical thread. Nurses collaborate and practice to preserve, sustain, and protect the natural environment and are aware of the health consequences of environmental degradation, for example, climate change. They advocate for initiatives that reduce environmentally harmful practices to promote health and well-being. Next slide, please. And then the healthcare system, what can we do? Next slide. Well, there's a lot of contributing factors. In the United States, we contribute 8.5% of our greenhouse gas emissions are due to healthcare. Now, that's crazy making. On one side, we're trying to help people, keep people from harm. On the other side, we're causing harm. So we've got to get that under control. If the US, or if healthcare globally was a nation, we'd be the 5th largest producer of greenhouse gases as a nation. Not the US, but healthcare all rolled together. Next slide. So we have to address these things and start to move in these areas. Healthcare Without Harm is an organization that has wonderful information on how to do that. Next slide, please. And Nurses Drawdown. This is using drawdown solutions amplified by nursing on how we start to get things done. Next slide. And this is a global movement urging all nurses to be involved in protecting our forests, planting trees, having a plant-based diet, decreasing food waste, educating girls. That's actually a very effective, highly effective climate solution. Walkable, bikeable cities, so it's safe to walk and bike, and there's mass transit, and renewable energy are what nurses around the world are encouraging people to do. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. Food, as I said, plant-based diet, clean cook stoves, reducing food waste. Next slide. And these are some things that hospitals can do. Again, you'll have access to these slides. I want to save plenty of time for questions. So next slide. Walkable, bikeable cities. Next slide. Making sure that our hospitals have places to store bikes, that they're we use where possible, you know, electric vehicles, support mass transit. Next slide. Educating girls. Next slide. And doing outreach and making sure that young people are educated, then have a clear path into healthcare if they choose that profession. Next slide. and looking at our energy consumption. Next slide. Paying attention to our lights and our printers, and using power strips so we can turn things off, and just really being as efficient as possible with our use of electricity. Next slide. And then nature-based solutions. Next slide. So thinking about how much paper do we use? Do we have to print things? And encouraging more trees on our property and in our cities, and encouraging your cities to plant trees. Honoring Nurses Week with planting trees, honoring the birth of children with planting trees, and really getting our forests redeveloped. Next slide, please. And working on decarbonizing our healthcare system. So there's a lot more coming about that. I don't want to say a lot about that, but we're working on that at a national level. We have our highest levels of government encouraging healthcare to decarbonize. And so we're working on that. How are we going to do that? And it's complex, it's complicated, it's a system that we have to consider, but we are looking at how can healthcare not be part of the problem. Next slide, please. And this little video, I'm not going to show it, but it was created by one of my students. So getting our students involved and helping them realize that they have an impact that they can make, that they can create change, that they can be on their units creating change, really gives a lot of hope to young people, and certainly gives us a lot of hope. So next slide, please. And getting this in our education. At our school at the University of Minnesota, we have decided to have planetary health woven through our entire curriculum. Every course in our nursing curriculum now has planetary health content. So our students are graduating, being ready to be global leaders in how do we restore the health of our planet. This is nursing, and this is nursing education. And I can tell you that instead of it causing problems for us, we're drawing people who want to come to our university for research for PhDs, for their doctoral studies. We're drawing, we have more students than we can, actually have in our program. We're having it more. And the hospitals are starting to ask for our students. That was pretty interesting. One of our large hospitals said, Teddie, I want all of your planetary health prepared nurses, because this is the direction we're moving as a hospital, and we want that type of employee. So it's not a lose-lose situation, it's a win-win situation. Next slide, please. And your students are watching. There is a program called the Planetary Health Report Card, and they can grade your school based on how much planetary health activity is going on. It is a global movement. There's a Planetary Health Report Card for medical schools, and there's a Planetary Health Report Card for nursing schools. And the students do the grading. It has nothing to do with faculty, making the grade or proving this. The students do the research, and they report the grade, and it's transparent. You can look up these schools and see where they are. So I used it to say to our dean of our medical school, Dean, I told her, guess what? You folks have moved up from a C- to a C. That's very good work. You're moving in the right direction. Just want to let you know, nursing is receiving an A. So, and nothing gets an administrator moving faster than a poor grade. So if you're trying to get this moving through your colleges and universities, the Planetary Health Report Card is a great option. Next slide. I'm not going to play this, but again, you'll have a link to this. And this is the Filipino nurses saying the Planetary Health Pledge, which is lovely to see your nurses being involved in making this commitment. Next slide, please. So the decision is ours. Which future do we want for the generations that follow? This is a picture. I was giving a talk at the United Nations, and my daughter pulled it up for my grandson to watch. Obviously, he didn't know much other than he saw the grandma was on the video screen. But this is the future. I want him to grow up and say, "You did something, Grandma. You did something. You tried to make it better." And that's what I want all our children to say. Whether you have children or grandchildren or neighborhood children, I want all of them to say, the nurses stood up and did something. Next slide, please. So with that, I have resources available. I'm happy to give you the access to these slide decks. This is a global movement. There are wonderful things that can help support your work. I encourage you to join us and be part of this movement. And I hope to see you in Malaysia next spring and continue to grow this. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for that very insightful. Actually, it's kind of, it's reminding all of us on what was taught to us when we were still young in elementary school. So it feels good that nurses like us can contribute to this kind of movement. I actually remembered my student last year when one of the community engagement projects that they presented as a team is about fast fashion. And as far as I remember, they actually discussed that topic in the community, in the mall, actually, wherein a lot of people are coming in and they discussed about the impact of fast fashion. People are buying clothes, and then when these clothes are not sold, it is typically burned, and it is a cause of carbon emissions.
Right.
So can you imagine? And now I can see on really how it can be like a curricular thread in the curriculum. As you mentioned a while ago, I mean, it can be interwoven even in all the courses, and it can be a part of what we call service learning, even as a strategy. So it's very insightful, Doctor. I'm sure that most of the participants learned a lot, because it's like there are so many opportunities and ideas for faculty members and also for students, I mean, on how they would like to contribute in this movement and in this advocacy as a part of our role as educators as well. So I will be reading some questions, Doctor, some comments from our participants here. From Ms. Rowena, very interesting topic, an eye-opener that we healthcare providers has an important contribution to improve health by taking care of our environment and our planet itself. Another one from Mr. Peter Wainpa. I'd like to thank you so much, Doctor, for inviting me to be a part of this discussion. It is so interesting. I hope that I could be a part of more of this. What a great presentation. And we have another one here. Hello, everyone. I'm Genevieve from Ghana. So we have some messages also here. Most are expression of gratitude from the participants, because honestly, Dr. I mean personally, as someone who leads a nursing program, and one of the initiatives of our university is really community engagement and service learning. And really, I saw a lot of avenues and opportunities wherein the students can really, and also us as faculty members, to contribute to this movement. It's just really so interesting.
And I think sometimes people are tempted to say, that there's not enough time in the curriculum. We don't have room. But all you have to do is to say, we're covering, cardiovascular status today and assessment. You want to know, does somebody have access to a cooling center? If the temperatures go, way high in their area, what's their plan? What are they going to do? Somebody has a respiratory condition. What is their plan? What are they going to do? Do they understand how to download an app that has an air quality index so they know whether they're safe going outside or not going outside today? It doesn't take a lot of extra content to weave this in and really help our nurses, our future nurses, understand how this is connected. Now, I will say that many of our young people are growing up knowing that this is a reality. They understand that something's happening, something's changing. What they might not understand is that nurses can do something about it. So that's the most important takeaway message, is this is nursing. This isn't some extra side thing that if we have time, we deal with it. This is nursing. Nursing, by definition of our profession, is database, science-driven profession. So we're deeply grounded in the science. We're deeply connected to the ethics of preserving life, decreasing harm, making sure we alleviate suffering where possible, and that we're responsible for future generations. That is how we nurse. That's what we do. So we need to be involved.
Yes, doctor, because typically what we hear in our field is environmental health, but we rarely hear, I will, like in my case, we rarely hear this word planetary health. Honestly, in other countries for sure, although there are countries who are, in this movement, but from what I have learned from your presentation is it's very critical because it's like we need to consider the multi-system or multiple effects of ecosystem strain in in human health. It's like going back to the basic, honestly, like because we're advocating for we're advocating for health, but really,
Absolutely.
what are those that are causing these diseases and things like that? Yeah.
Well, right, and we've kind of. I'll speak for the United States because maybe not every nation is this way, but we've kind of slipped over towards, as I said, illness care. Really, once somebody's sick, then we have an expertise on how to care for them once they're sick. But that's not sustainable. That's what we're finding right now is we can't have all our citizens get ill and then we start getting involved. COVID was a harsh reality of when you have people, your population getting ill, your whole economy starts to collapse and your education systems collapse. And so we can't afford that anymore. We have to be an illness prevention people. Now that's always been nursing. That's our field. That's one of the things that we're really, really good at. Medicine is an illness treatment system for the most part. But nursing, at every turn, we try to prevent harm. We try to alleviate suffering.
You're
So
right,
stand tall, stand proud, and step in, nurses. Step in and start to lead. This is our moment.
Yes. Another thing, doctor, we have here from Miss Mimi. Thank you very much for a very interesting topic. This is much in need for this moment. We have another one here from Peter again. Thanks to our presenter. So happy to be a part of this. My concern has to do with how this movement can be spread across the globe. I am asking specifically with regards to poor countries like Liberia. Remember, these poor nations suffer greatly from climate change.
Absolutely, and I thank you for whoever wrote that comment. In that those who have contributed least to the problem are suffering first and worst. So we do not put it on their shoulders to make the changes. We put it on our shoulders like mine here in the United States of the way that we live, the way we consume, the way we, is contributing to global health issues. And so it is up to us to shift our patterns of behavior, not to place it on an added layer of burden on poorer nations. For them, you asked, what do we do for them? Is to figure out how we're going to intervene to help those nations become resilient and be able to adapt to the changes that are occurring. So how are they going to survive severe heat episodes? How are they going to survive sea level rise? How are they going to grow enough crops to feed their people? That is where we can intervene with those nations instead of putting it on their shoulders to make the big shifts related to carbon emissions.
And also, Doctor, I have here my colleagues who would like to share their reflections and also takeaways from your presentation. May I call on Dr. Jeremy Morales? Hi, Doctor.
Good evening. Hello. I hope you can hear me. I could not share my video because it says here. Oh, I think I can already share it. Great. Thank you very much for allowing me to share my video. And thank you very much, Dr. Potter, for sharing your thoughts on this topic, planetary health. I am not a nurse by profession, but I got so amazed with it. Incorporating environmentalism Planet Action, and nursing care, nursing actions. So my takeaways for this talk would be more on climate solidarity pacts over collective suicide pacts, because it's always an in thing. It should be our responsibility to cooperate rather than to perish. It may not just be for our generation, but for the next generation. In fact, 10 years ago in 2012, I conducted a research um, looking into the carbon emissions of St. Paul University, Philippines. And that was 10 years ago. And we are, with this topic, with this talk that you have shared with us, I got engrossed about it. And hopefully we would be able to come up with an updated version of the research project and to incorporate health matters into the new one. So safeguarding health and well-being is a responsibility of everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Potter and Dr. Bench, for spearheading this. It is actually really an eye-opener for all of us. Indeed, for the past how many years? Past 2-3 years, when we had this pandemic brought about by COVID-19, there is a good thing that I see that happened. Well, with all due respect to many of us who have suffered and who had family members who suffered, one good thing that I saw was that the earth breathed at some time. The earth breathed at some time, and it was a kind of rejuvenation. So maybe it's really a call for us to continue protecting the earth, because at that time when everything stopped, when everybody stopped, we all breathed fresh air from all over the world. So it's something that we should embrace already at this moment, and a lesson that we learned from this pandemic. Once again, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Amazing.
And of course, before Dr. Bench, before I take it off, I would like to acknowledge our university president, Sister Merceritas Ang. She's with us. Also, the dean of the School of Nursing and Allied Health Sciences, Dr. Anuncia Chantalosik, is here. I also see Sister Lasala. Jocelyn Lasala, she's here. She's also an environmentalist sister, and all of us. I see a lot of. I see many participants from the different parts of the world, from Indonesia, from Ghana, Oman, Saudi Arabia, from the Philippines. Thank you very much for joining us tonight in Asia, and we hope really that you will be joining us in our next sessions for the series of conferences that we have. Thank you very much again, Dr. Potter and Dr. Bench.
Amazing, really. Dr. Jeremy, that was an amazing statement, really. Your reflection kind of resonated with everybody for sure, especially during that time. And I have here one of my colleagues also, Alan Paulo. Alan Paulo, please.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Potter, for that kind of overwhelming presentation, but it's full of learnings. So some of our students or some of our attendees here are undergraduate students, and they may have a boxed idea of nurses staying at the bedside. So your talk, Dr. Potter, extends our vision that nurses can be planetary health leaders. And as leaders, we have to set the pace. A fast leader makes the organization produce results fast also. And there should always be a sense of urgency. And in the words of Sister Simone Roach, caring is not unique to nursing, really. So it's an interdisciplinary approach for planetary health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing. We have here, I think this will be probably the last that I will read. Interesting topic. How can we help involve our students here in Saudi Arabia to advocate the planetary movement mission and vision?
That's a question you want me to address?
Yes, Doctor. For Saudi Arabia, she's asking a question.
I love our young people. Absolutely love our young people. What I don't love is when people say, oh, the young people coming up, they're going to solve everything. That is not on their shoulders to solve everything. It's on all of our shoulders to work together to figure this out. So it's creating space for our young people to ask questions, but also to have a voice in shaping the future that they want to see. One of the things that you see with Planetary Health is it's about shaping the future. It's not just about putting Band-Aids on, as I say, a hemorrhage, putting Band-Aids on things. It's about recreating this or creating the systems changes that will create a viable, livable cities, good work, elevate all people. So it's working with our young people to say, okay, what are your visions for the future? And how do we participate with you to bring and make that possible? It means getting young people on committees, getting young people in front of our legislators and government leaders. It means elevating all voices, all people to be able to reach their highest potential. So how do we get young people involved? We invite them to think about their unique abilities and gifts. They don't have to all become conservationists or biologists. They have to figure out what they're good at and then dedicate what they're good at in service to the future. That's what it requires.
Yeah. And we have here, Doctor, also messages of expression of gratitude. You have given us not only education for the next generation, but a healing environment for our future nurses who are about to face the real world of healthcare. So we also have some messages here, really informative. Thanks a lot. Really, Doctor, we've learned a lot. I mean, honestly speaking, it's an eye-opener, same as with one of the participants mentioned a while ago. Because in my current work, we have been so actively engaged to the community. We're doing a lot of community engagement projects, but it gave us opportunities to do more and to think of ways on how we can advocate for this movement. So we really thank you for your presentation. And there's even a participant here asking when you will be. He's asking, I would like to find out when will you be inviting Dr. Potter again. So there are a lot of interesting messages. Thank you. We need to connect more and collaborate to share knowledge that will simplify nursing care. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Dr. Potter. Excellent lecture. Okay, and another participant is asking, will you be sharing the recording and presentation with us? No problem. You can share it. We will try to find ways on how are we going to disseminate it to all the participants who attended for tonight. So to close our event, Alan, please. Okay. So if you would like to follow Dr. Teddie Potter in her LinkedIn account, so you can just feel free to scan her this QR code to direct you to her LinkedIn professional account and page. And also, if you would like to follow me also in my Twitter and also my LinkedIn account, so just look at the screen. Okay. And of course, also follow the St. Paul University Facebook and LinkedIn page. All right. And to close our event, of course, so let me just share an important, meaningful quotation that I can still remember, something that is related to environmental health from the Executive Director of the World Health Organization, that a ruined planet cannot sustain human lives in good health. A healthy planet and healthy people are two sides of the same coin. So in behalf of all the professionals in this room, in this virtual event, specifically to the President of St. Paul University Philippines, Sister Mercy Divas Ang, for her generosity, kindness, and gratitude that is also pouring all over us. and also to the Dean of the School of Health Sciences, Dr. Anta Losig, and also to my colleagues here, Dr. Jeremy and also Dr. Sir Alan also, who helped us to give their thoughts and reflections also regarding the event. To all the nurses, to all the faculty members, and to all the nursing students and other discipline who are in this event. Let us all remember that what makes us fulfilled is when we do things with purpose. And honestly speaking, from the presentation of Dr. Pater, it is really something that when Dr. Pater delivers the topic, the lesson, it will really, it goes through us. So that's actually what I felt from the topic. So when we have a purpose, that will either way or directly or indirectly touch the lives of the people around us, or maybe educate young professionals such as nurses in our advocacies, such as Planetary Health. And additionally also, because we are trailblazers of change for future nurses in the profession, because I, and also the nurses here, we are educating and training students who will be taking care of patients, who will be saving lives, and taking care of our world, of our planet, of our environment, and most specifically, who will be using their voices for the benefit of other nurses in the profession. So this is such a great learning opportunity for all of us. We are really grateful, Dr. Pater. We can't thank you enough really for this very insightful and new information for all of us. Thank you for your time and for providing us with these very meaningful ways for us to do better also in our profession, because we want to be better for all the people and also to the planet that we serve. Thank you so much. To our participants who are still here in this room, just feel free to link in our evaluation. So for you to be able to get the certificate, so please feel free to click the link, okay, for the evaluation of this event. So to our participants, please do not forget to click the link. And also, we will be having another event, which will happen in a few days. Actually, it will be in 1 week. So this is also something that is meaningful to me personally, because she's actually one of the people who mentored me, and she's actually one of the coaches that really taught me a lot of things. And she will be discussing to us the topic about learning from conflict, enlarging our growth. And the event will be on February 19th. It's actually quite early in her time, 5 a.m. Pacific time, and 9 p.m. here in the Philippines, and also 4 p.m. in Saudi Arabia. And our speaker will be Dr. Sarah Kim. She is the Associate Dean for Educational Quality Improvement and a research professor in surgery and adjunct research professor in biomedical informatics and medical education. And also George G.B. Bilsten Professor in the Art of Communication with Peers and Patients in the School of Medicine, University of Washington. So for all the participants, please do not forget, we will give you additional 5 minutes for you to do your evaluation. Ms. Rowena, the evaluation is already in the chat box. So just feel free to click in the link. To the rest of the participants, please feel free. And of course, thanks again to Dr. Pater, to our speaker. It was really such an insightful and very rich topic.
Thank you, Dr. Bench.
Thank you.
And congratulations again. And
it was amazing.
So we have participants from different parts of the world, no?
Yeah, I saw from Ghana, from Oman, Qatar.
Oman, Saudi, Indonesia. There are many from Indonesia tonight. Yes.
And Philippines, of course.
Of course, Philippines. Yes.
It's interesting because it's like what we are taught when we were kids, cycling, just the basic things that we need to remember to protect our environment. You got me. And now we're talking about and now we're talking about on how we can make a difference, but as professionals this time and as leaders. So it's really amazing.
That's true. It's everyone's responsibility, guys. Very timely. It is very timely. All the topics are very timely.
Because when I'm browsing also like social media, I always see the word planetary health in social media. And it is something that, like here in Saudi Arabia, I haven't seen like an event that talked about it. Environmental health, like Saudi Green Initiative, Sustainable Development Goals. That's why I agree that it's an emerging and it's really an amazing movement.
Okay. Good night, Doc Bench, and good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. We will
from Southeast Asia. Yes. Good night.
I know because it's 11 p.m. on your time.
Yeah. We'll see you again.
Feel free. What I will do is I will wait for a little bit, maybe 5 minutes before I close the event so that everybody can do the evaluation. But to my dear colleagues here from St. Paul University, I know it's late and you have work tomorrow. So feel free to go out of our meeting room. I will be closing it in a few minutes until the number of participants drops and make sure that they did the evaluation. I will give you 2 minutes more.
Okay. Yes. May I go ahead, Dr. Bench?
Yes. Thank you, Doctor.
All right. Good night.
Please do not forget to do the evaluation before we close in our event.